What's up, Weekend Warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Weekendology Podcast. This is the only podcast with the hottest takes, the best talking points, and the stories to spark your weekend conversations. Will Deichley back alongside my co-host, Aaron Berg. Aaron, how's everything going for you today?
Well, we're big time.
Yeah.
We're in the studio, and we have our first guest right here with us. So
yeah, we're coming to you
pumped.
live from MZ Studio in Dallas, Texas, and we're really excited to be here. And who would have thought our third episode would have given us the ability to be in a full-fledged studio, have our first guest on? It's pretty exciting, don't you think?
We're big time.
Yeah,
that's all I can say. We're big time and we're popular.
Yeah.
Just need those subscribers.
Yeah, we've definitely made it. We're up on Apple, Spotify. We're on the whole 9 yards now, so we're ready to go. And we're kind of continuing our conversation from last week. So, I like to do kind of like a week in review. So, Aaron, with our conversation last week about kind of mental health in pro sports, we wanted to switch topics and do a little bit more of kind of what the NCAA is doing, and kind of taking it from a different angle then as to what the NCAA is doing to address mental health. So that brings us to our first guest, actually. We have Pat Rusnak. He is a former NCAA track and field athlete who attended the University of Wisconsin River Falls. He ran the 200-meter, the 400-meter, along with 4x2 and 4x4 relays from 2011 to 2013. So, Pat, welcome to the Weekendology Podcast. How's everything going for you today?
Hey, doing very well. How are you guys doing today?
It's going pretty good, man. Glad to have you on.
Got the track star himself in the house. Pat Rusnak, Rusnak.
Good to hear your voice, man. It's been a little while. I noticed we've been running since 2010 back at Centennial High School. So.
Yeah. So for everyone who doesn't know, a little background here. I've known Pat for a long time. We ran track and played pretty much every sport you can think of back in Minnesota. So
That's right.
he joined Centennial Track, the illustrious Centennial Track, word we like to use around here. So he was a lot better at it than I was, and his career took him into the NCAA ranks, and he went on to Wisconsin River Falls. So, but we've been friends for a while, so it's good to have him on and share his journey in track and field.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about you, Pat, as well. Aaron talks very highly of you. He's always we got to get the track star on the phone. Got to get him talking. Get some viewpoints from him. So here we are, and we're glad to have you. And like I said before, last week we talked about more of the pro side of what mental health is doing. We discussed and explored conversations about what Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, even stories from what Michael Phelps has gone through from depression, anxiety, and really just kind of the things that we'd like to see gonna change from a pro sport aspect. We're kind of doing the same thing this week. We wanted to talk about kind of what the NCAA is doing, because they're doing a whole lot more in terms of kind of addressing these things through depression and anxiety, and they have more of a type of centralized hub for all of these types of information and what kind of how to teach and inspire or inform what mental health is. So, Pat, kind of tell us, what your experience is from your athletic career playing days, and what you've seen so far.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, like you mentioned before, I ran for a couple of years over there at River Falls, and starting off as a sophomore over there, it was my first year running. I was in the dorms, and one of my next door neighbors he was on the track team as well, and he pushed me to join the team going into my sophomore year. And it was a little bit different, running at D3. It was not as competitive as a D1, obviously, but there were still a lot of people who wanted to be on the team and compete for track and field. During the fall time, we started off as doing some early on workouts and running workouts prior to the season starting. It was pretty rigorous, 3 days out of the week, getting up at 5:30 in the morning, lifting at 6, and then running all afternoon, 2 to 3 hours practice in the afternoon. And by the time the season was starting, by the winter time, it basically weeded out a lot of the people who were not as serious as running as the people who were. And the coaching staff really at that point didn't have a whole lot of other, cuts to make to finalize those rosters. So that was kind of the process of getting onto the track team there at River Falls. So
Pat, you and me running in high school, I mean, you can remember what high school track was like. It was competitive, but it wasn't, I guess to say, if you didn't have a good day, it wasn't the end of the world. You could bounce back. And I guess, as they say in, I guess lower level high school track, it's a social sport, that sort of thing. It's a lot more relaxed.
Right.
Take me through when you were getting on a River Falls track team, I guess what your expectations were, and then what changed with those expectations, and just kind of that process of kind of that, this is a lot different than what I thought.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, like high school track and college track, it's similar, but there's also a very, very big gap between the competitive levels between the athletes there. Going into it as a young athlete, coming out of high school, you kind of think you're all that, coming out of high school and doing really well, and then you get to the first couple workouts and meets there at the college level, and you really get humbled. You see how good those athletes are, how fast and how strong they are, and it's a totally different ball game, and it again humbles you really quick, but also it helps you to focus on becoming a better athlete, to raise your game and get on their level, so to speak. So
yeah, I think that's interesting when you say that, because Division I athletes or even college athletes in general have so much to balance. And I think that's kind of like what the focal point of this conversation is about, is how do these young kids, 18, 19, 20 years old, come into school, balance the immense pressure of, okay, I've got to compete at on an athletic level, be able to work out, progress in my sport, but also have a social life, also have the right college experience, and also perform academically. So how did you go ahead and balance kind of all that together within your first couple of years?
Yeah, no, good question. And like you said before, it's a lot to manage all at once. Going into college as an 18-year-old, leaving home for the first time, learning how to live on your own, meet new people, take classes that are, the hardest classes you've ever had up to this point in your life. And, and now you're starting to compete with all these athletes that are, way above where you were recently in high school. And, kind of going through that and how I managed all that was, I guess, kind of building that community of workers and runners around me. All the people on the track team, they're all going through the same thing as you are, or at least the freshmen and sophomores are. And, building those close relationships with them and leaning on them for support and their guidance. And that really what helped me manage all that myself. And I also leaned a lot on my family. I called them a lot and talked to them about my stresses and my anxieties, and just having their support, weekly, letting them tell me they have my back, and it really gave me that confidence to keep moving forward and keep managing the stressful life of being a student athlete.
That's awesome. Hey, and you mentioned how you dealt with those stresses, and I think that's great. I think it's really important to lean on other people because they're the most accessible and they're the most they know you the best, so they know they can give the best advice to you. But did you have any, when you were just on your own, and track and field, very obviously, unless you're in a relay, it's an individual sport. It's all on you. Everyone's watching you. Did you have a routine of any kind, or was there anything that you did consistently that really helped out, especially during a meet? Because I know from my experience just running high school track and field, a lot of that anxiety is built up right before the meet. Did you do anything to kind of ease that and to get into that mindset to go compete?
Right. No, good question. Thinking back to it now, what I usually did, before my events, I would kind of, put my headphones on and put on some music that was, kind of get me ramped up, but also get me focused on the task at hand. I think leaning on a lot of my coaches too on what they have to support for all their athletes, giving us a lot of tips and tricks on really how to get outside of yourself. It's so easy to get, so caught up in your anxieties and put so much pressure on yourself, but really looking outside and having fun with it, focusing on what you have to do, but also being as loose as you can, remembering to laugh, remembering to have fun and be with your friends during the meet and don't put, so much pressure on yourself, but always remember to be out there and have a good time and keep on competing as you did in high school.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? I feel like everything, whether you're in a job or you're at school, just, regular class, or you're competing at any level, whether it's in the amateur level or the professional level, or you're in D1, D2, or D3. I mean, it's incredible if you just forget, I guess, all of those things that are kind of fake. I mean, if you just remember, hey, I'm doing this, I'm trying to have fun, I'm trying to compete, and remember why you're doing it. I think that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, and I agree with you,
For
Aaron.
sure.
Like, everybody gets too hyper focused on, okay, I've got to perform really well at this level to get to that next stage. And I think if you're an athlete, you're always trying to do that. You're always trying to push yourself even further, go beyond what your current limits are. And we talked about it in the last podcast too, that mental toughness, so to speak, is so important. But when you put certain things like personal issues on the back burner in order to achieve your goals, it's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do. And one of the interesting contrasts that I found from a lot of what the pro sports are doing and what the NCAA has is the NCAA has so many different types of documents and hundreds upon hundreds of pages on their website about mental health, depression, anxiety, what to look out for. There's different educational materials on that. And Pat, did you find that, when you went through the athletic program that they kind of drilled that home, or was any of this kind of material presented to you and kind of what to look out for this?
Yes and no. Going back to the NCAA forums, like you said before, there was a ton of forums before the season. The whole track team had to sit down in a room and go through them page by page, and put your signature on each individual page. And there really wasn't a whole lot of, I hate to say support, but kind of like that guidance of really what to do and what can you do to better yourself at being a student athlete and guidance. It was more about, from what I remember, kind of what the rules and regulations are. This, you can't do this, can't do that.
Right.
That was kind of more of the content within those documents, from what I remember.
So if you did have any kind of problem, I mean, was that told to you before the season started of, hey, if this happens, this is where you can turn? Or was it just kind of left to, hey, go to your coaches?
Right. From what I remember, I don't think there was a whole lot of guidance of what to do if you run into certain issues, or you're going through problems yourself and anxieties. At River Falls, we did have a on-campus career guidance and health department. You can go visit counselors anytime you wanted. They could guide you through anything. If it was career advice, it was through if you're struggling through your classes, or if you're having anxieties and stress about being an athlete. They're a good resource to sit down with and talk to about.
But that was an NCAA though. That was River Falls, correct?
Correct. That was all school. That was not in NCAA. So
see, that's interesting, and that's the thing that we talked about on the last episode, more focused on the major leagues and how they're slowly incorporating that into the leagues. And finally, after years and years of tragedy,
decades almost.
Yeah. I mean, and terrible things happening, and athletes finally coming out and saying, hey, I have struggled with this, which obviously, I mean, you'd think that they would know that athletes at some point, everyone's got a breaking point. They're going to reach it. That They would have a clear cut, okay, if this happens, this is what you can do. I mean, and especially for you being at a D3 school, I think it's great the NCAA is starting to do that as well, and actually has shown that they've pioneered it over major leagues. But there's a lot more schools than what you have at Power 5 Division I schools. And to me, they're leaving out, even though the 1AA schools, or the D2 and especially D3. I mean, look, you have to turn to the same counselor that's dealing with all the other students. I mean, to me, and Will and I, we went to a Division I school. I was involved in the athletic department a little bit, and I saw firsthand Division I athletes getting services like that and their own counselors, their own programs and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So it's strange to me that you're under the NCAA umbrella, but they're treating you differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And I think that's interesting how the contrast between Division I, where there's so many different types of materials available, and then the huge sudden decrease in those resources when D2 or D3 you're kind of
just a drop off,
going further beyond with that as well. And I don't know, what do you think that could be? Because I think it's more just based off of like kind of the money and the gravitude of what you have within the D1 school, but I don't know. Could be wrong.
Right. Yeah, I hear you, man. I think, like you said before, I don't know if it's all money or if it's, I don't know the exact statistic there, but I know there's a huge gap, between the financial funding and support they offer D1 schools as they do D2 and D3 combined, and I don't know, again, if it's all financial related or if there's underlying meaning to that. But
yeah, and I think the whole thing with the D1 is there's, with that so much resources available, obviously, there's going to be more success stories that you share. And I read an interesting article where it kind of goes through and it details different D1 colleges, and students and athletes have found that there's an increased more positive mental health status within these athletes because they have a stricter schedule or there's more productivity being done than opposed to those who don't have athletics on their books then. Did you speak with anybody, not in the athletic side and kind of gauge how their kind of quality of life was, comparing it to yours as to, athletics versus non-athletics?
Sure. As for students,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, my direct roommate, his name was Mike. He was not an athlete on campus. He was involved with different clubs. He also was involved with intramurals, which is great, but it's a different time commitment there. Obviously, it's not the same,
right? Not
the same structure for your day-to-day living. But from what I see, I mean, I think so. I think overall, I think student athletes have a great quality of life. There's also a lot more on their schedule, a lot more to do, a lot more time management they have to take care of on a day-to-day basis. But I think getting that daily dose of exercise and being around people and being around support, I think all that's really good things. And I would, that was one of the best decisions I made at River Falls was joining the track team for those reasons alone. I think my quality of life was heightened due to joining the track team.
And obviously, maybe you found that kind of schedule or that stricter kind of lifestyle maybe helped you lead to be a little bit more productive as well, as opposed to, because I didn't play athletics in college, neither of us did, Aaron, and I found that I had a lot of time on my hands where I was kind of just, not being productive or kind of doing nothing, so to speak, which is maybe terrible to say, but there's a lot of downtime in college too, between classes. So I think by having that kind of structure really maybe would facilitate more productivity, and I guess in the end, maybe a little bit more of a positive mental outlook.
Yeah, I was a mascot, so
Aaron was a mascot.
You better watch yourself over there. Well, I was a Division I mascot. I'm the only Division I athlete in the room.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, so Aaron did adhere to certain structures and stuff for that.
Well, I wasn't part of the NCAA, so I could get away with more things than Pat could.
Right.
I have seen your dance moves, so it is very impressive.
That qualifies as very athletic.
We'll save that for another time. That's another debate. But one of the interesting things that I saw, this study actually was from UW-Madison, actually, and what they were finding was that these athletes who have the structure within itself did report kind of a more higher level of mental health then as well. What did you find, Pat, that really kind of stood out to you as some of the struggles that you had within being a student athlete and kind of balancing the two together, academics and athletics?
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned before, I think the biggest thing is just trying to manage that tough workload that's brand new to you, as well as trying to balance and maintain your physical your physical physique and how well you're doing on the track. I think by going through it longer, and the longer you're at it, the better you get at it. Some of the hardest parts of that was for me was, okay, you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning. 3 days out of the week, expected to perform on the track, in the weight room, in the classes, and you get mentally drained, you get physically drained, and trying to keep up with all your classes and on the track over a certain period of time, it drains on you mentally and physically.
Did you ever reach a point where you had a breaking point in that process? That's a lot for anyone to handle, where it's just kind of dumped on you right then, where you have harder classes, harder athletic standards. You're learning a lot being away from home, and just all of that at once. Did you reach a point where you had to reach out to help or try to get help in any way to cope?
Yeah, no, good question. When I think back to that, I think back to those last couple of weeks of the spring semester, when your classes are coming to an end, you have final exams and final essays, and then on the track side of things, it was always close to our conference meet. So you're trying to get your times down to make that conference meet. I did, thinking back to it, I did kind of reach my breaking point, and I did have to rely heavily on my friends and family. And actually, I did go to an on-campus counselor to talk about my problems and help them, ask them to help me through it. And it was a very, very difficult time. And, we always find a way to get through things, and you lean on people, and I'm so thankful for the support I got, or else I don't know how I could have managed to get through my classes and still perform on the track.
Yeah, that is amazing. You say that, because I feel like every sport, it's always coming up to their form of playoffs. It's always by finals, and it's like, well, how are they supposed to get all of that done at once? So yeah, that's what it amazes me, that you have these other Division II, Division III, where that's great. You can go to the school counselor and they can help you through it. So that's great. That's an option, but I just think that's a huge reason that you're going through the same things that a Division I athlete are going through. Similar schedule, and definitely, probably even harder classes, because you have a heavier school workload, and you actually you have to show up to class. So it's
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, but so that's a thing to me. It's just surprising that the school wouldn't say, hey, we're going to put one counselor, and not even for track. They could just say, this is you had football, basketball, what else did you have at River Falls? What other sports?
Oh, hockey was a big one.
Right. You had these other levels, so you could have one person just be the athletic counselor, and I think you'd see leaps and bounds in mental health there, because that's a lot. How many counselors, was it the same counselor at River Falls dealing with everybody, or did they have multiple, or how did that work?
Yeah, thinking back, I think they had a couple of them on campus, but like you said before, that's not just for the student athletes, that's for all the students.
Think of how many. River Falls is not tiny. That's a medium-sized school. Think of how many athletes plus just regular students are going to them. That's a lot to deal with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know how they managed to. If I think of all the people that actually went to the counselor, how many people didn't go to the counselor when they really needed to, because they couldn't get an appointment, or they didn't have the courage to get up and go do it.
And that's what I thought. Yeah. Right. How do they get appointments? How do they have that kind of schedule where, they are open? I'm sure that's a big gap that they really need to fill, and that they're probably seeing is they don't have enough time to get all those students in, and they're probably seeing a lack of students. They're probably, I'll just handle it on my own, or because they don't have the money or the resources to go see outside counselors outside of campus. So it's
interesting you bring that up, Aaron, because I did a lot of work within SLU's athletic program as well, kind of interviewing different athletes, I guess, and a lot of the issues that they brought up, it was like, how, what are you doing? How's everything going? And they're like, well, I was struggling with kind of balancing that whole athletic side versus the personal side. And really, they said, well, I don't really have enough time to kind of address these issues. I don't have the resources available to me, or really the
and that's
time.
A Division I program.
Yeah, and that's a D1 program, and that's an established school too. But personally, for them, it was a battle of, okay, I don't even have the time to talk about these issues or to really address these, and two, the resources available aren't as great as I would like too, because a lot of the undergrads are kind of just like, okay, well, if the athletes are given a whole lot more resources in terms of tutoring and nutrition programs and trainers and stuff, what are the non-athletes doing? What are they able to do? Like, well, I don't have access to pretty much any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you were able to kind of, get those addressed for you, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and mental health is, I think, I don't know, the single greatest epidemic in the country, at least silent epidemic, and with it being
fastest killer of people under 40.
Yeah, very true.
You're right.
And kind of transitioning towards more of what the NCAA is doing versus what kind of the pro leagues are doing. Like I said, other than the NBA, I haven't found a whole lot of other leagues who have more of a centralized hub. And this is primarily for D1 athletes. That's on the website. There's a lot of literature and stuff up on the website for NCAA, but past that D1, maybe into D2 or D3 or even D4, kind of below that.
There's no D4.
There's no D4?
There's no D4.
What's lower than D3?
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Community colleges then. Man.
Mascot. Me.
Well, Aaron got treated.
I'm a D4 athlete.
He's a D4 athlete then. All right, Aaron. Well, I don't know.
Intramurals. Intramurals. You got
intramurals. There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, one of the theories that I had was that it's so prevalent is because it's a collegiate setting, mental health and studies are kind of more prevalent within it because it's an inherent academic environment. Whereas opposed to the pro leagues, you kind of just there to do your job and that's it. You go out and play and you perform and that's it. I think there's more of an inherent kind of like talk about some of the mental health issues within academics and the collegiate setting. Is that what you've maybe found, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It kind of, like you mentioned before, there's not a whole lot of, not a whole lot of talk about it, and not a whole lot of, discussing about it. And it's a hush hush topic still today. And, it needs to be out there. It's a big epidemic, and we need to have more resources for not just the D1 athletes, but D2 athletes and D3 athletes. And everyone's, part of the NCAA. There has to be equal support and it's, in order for all student athletes to get, a good quality of life and be able to perform their best on all levels of academics and athletics.
Yeah. So this is a big question for you. And I mean, it takes quite a bit of thought to think how we can do this. But, obviously the theme of our episode today is changing this and making sure that all NCAA athletes get the support they need mentally. How can we go about this? I mean, what needs to happen? Because I think if you just place, like I said before, one counselor and say, this is the athletic counselor for, a D3 and then on D2 level, because I understand money is a big issue in those, they're even small NCAA or Division I NCAA schools struggle with that. They struggle with money. I mean, most of their sports are a drain on, for them. I mean, they just can't afford to sometimes even keep these sports around. So I understand it, but I think if you just hired one person, you have, like you said, you have all the trainers, all the nutritionists, all those resources. If we can get one person for athletics in general, I'm not even saying per sport, I think that'll make a huge difference. But Pat, I want to turn the question over to you. Yeah. What do you think we can do starting now? I mean, even going into this season, what can be done for the Division II, Division III levels?
Yeah, no, good question. I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head. I think there has to be a counselor designated to athletics solely on campus at all levels. And if it's a financial issue at that time, I think another option might be to look into doing maybe outside of practice support groups for all the athletes. Maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks, certain athletes can get together and talk about all their struggles they're going to together and how the way they're dealing with the problems and supporting each other. If it's sitting down, in the evening, again, once or twice a week or once every bi-weekly, and having someone to sit in with them, either it's a coach or a counselor, and just having that constant support. It's very important to know you're not in it alone, and you have people by your side and that support.
Yeah. Did you guys do that on your own? Did you get together with your teammates and share, hey, I'm going through this, I'm worried about this, I'm struggling with this?
Not like regularly, hanging out outside of the class and outside of track. We would always talk about it. It was never like a, designated time in the week. But yeah, we'd sit down together if it was at lunch or if it was, in the dorm rooms together. And that we'd always talk about that. That was one of the main things that student athletes talk about is everything they're going through, their stresses of managing their workload for academics and trying to perform on, in athletics. It's a very, very difficult process and challenge to handle.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pat. And I think based on my experience from just being in university for the first year, it was such an immense transition and struggle to kind of make that switch from, okay, living at home, being in a more of a high school setting to, you're 18 years old, you're technically living on your own, even though you're living with a bunch of other people. And to add athletics on top of that, there's a lot of stressors that athletes have. I mean, you got to adhere to your academic deadlines. You have to, commit to your athletic requirements as well. It could be the transition to college. There could be other genetic issues as well. So I think having that support or being able to kind of collaborate with your teammates or your classmates or dorm mates or whomever it is, but also having that structure within the university is going to help with mental health and kind of ease these stressors from basically kids, so to speak. I mean, these are 18, 19-year-old kids, so they don't know what it's like. These people are experiencing these things for the first time. They're not going to know if this is normal. What should I learn? What should I learn to expect from all this?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, they're kids. Thinking back to when I was 18, 19 years old, you think you have it all figured out, and you're almost too proud to talk about it at times. But if you're having that, if you get together as a group, you can see everyone else is going through the same problems as you. It's easier to talk about it and easier to work through your feelings and your stresses.
Yeah, and I think it's such a stark contrast from what the pros do because one, the pros they're adults. They've been through university. They've been through up to the point, 23, 24 years of life, they know how to kind of handle these things and that's their job. Right. If they don't perform and do their job, and they're going to lose it, they're going to find somebody else to replace them. Student athletes don't always have, or the pro athletes don't have school to fall back on. So I think there's kind of a safety net of the student athletes having kind of that university or that education to fall back on. If athletics doesn't work, then okay, I can always be a doctor or a lawyer, whatever your major is then.
But I think sometimes that's the problem, especially when you get into the bigger programs where it's very realistic that these guys can go pro, because if it doesn't work out, then what? And a lot of guys aren't prepared for it because it's also set up. And that's the thing. It's not all on these kids where, oh, well, you didn't prepare for it, so that's your loss. I mean, I think it is a responsibility to make sure you put yourself in the best position where you either graduate or you can go back and get your degree, because you have to know you're not going to play the sport forever. And it's how many people make it. I mean, look, the average career in pro sports is around 3-4 years. Yeah. So, but I think that's more of a reason where the schools need to get involved immediately, because they need to make sure these kids are prepared that, hey, this might not work out. So you need to have plan B, and you need to make sure you're taking care of what you need to take care of right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pat, did you have any classes or kind of like transitional help from coming from high school to college to help you with that transition, or anything kind of along those lines?
To be blunt, I don't think I did. I don't think there was any classes that were offered or that I knew about that was really, that bridge between high school and college and that transition, how to manage all that and how to effectively transition out of your high school life at home to your college life away from home.
Yeah, it's interesting. How the NBA has a rookie symposium.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, like, there's help for that the NBA does to help.
Why don't they do
from,
that? That's so easy to do. I mean, you don't even have to make it a week. Just do a couple days. Yeah. I mean, just hey, this is what you could expect. Instead of, Pat, you said you came in and they just threw a bunch of paperwork at you. I mean,
do you even understand what that paper was about?
Let alone being in your late 20s. I mean, heck, imagine, I don't even read full paperwork, as an adult. I can't imagine being 18 or 19 and here's a stack of paperwork and it's a bunch of basically legal jargon.
Aaron, you're signing your life away right now.
Right? No
Government's
kidding,
going to come to your door and be like, Aaron, you read that, or you signed this, stop reading it.
This is how we got Pat on the podcast. We threw a bunch of paperwork, and I printed off like 100 pages, and he's just like, okay, whatever. Just like the NCAA. But I mean, it's incredible that they do that, and then just expect you, okay, go perform. Oh, and also make sure you get above a 2.0 in your classes so you can stay eligible, and make sure you perform at the highest level and that sort of thing. I mean, that's just mind blowing to me. So I think it's so easy to do just for them to start that process of, like I said, you don't have to go through the full what the NBA or NFL is doing, but just a little bit of that, one counselor, and just more than just here's information, figure it on your own. I mean, these are 18-year-old kids. They do need their hand held a little bit, and at least that transition. Once you're in, I think, yes, it is on their responsibility to figure it out a little bit on, okay, how do I balance this? And it's teaching them, time management and all of that stuff. But that transition, I mean, just going to college is hard enough, and dealing with schedules and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think they could really benefit from providing that right off the bat.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be a week-long course. You can cover it within your freshman orientation, just a different subsection for student athletes coming in. I think there is orientation for the athletes before that they walk in the door too, but just saying, okay, these are the things you can expect. These are the struggles that you can potentially, see when you're an athlete. This is, how we're going to support you with these resources, whether it be time management or there is a counselor on staff for just athletics, because the difference between the students' problems and the athletes' problems can be so much different.
Right.
Obviously because everybody's problems are different, but like when you compare an athlete to a regular,
schedule
person,
is completely different.
Yeah, like their goals and aspirations could be completely different. An athlete could be, okay, I want to have this number of shots or this number of goals per season, as opposed to somebody like myself.
I have to get an A.
Yeah, I have to get an A. Like that.
Well, and if you're a D3 athlete like Pat, I mean.
You mean D4?
D4, yeah.
D4 athlete. Sorry, Pat.
I mean, like, Pat, you can attest to this, I'm sure. You had the double pressure, and not to say larger athletes don't, but I think it's safe to say that if you're a D3 athlete, I mean, especially track and field, you're 99.9% not going to go pro in that, unless you're going to go to the Olympics or something. But, I mean, you pretty much know, hey, I'm doing this, and then after I graduate, I'm done and I'm going on into the working world. So, I mean, to me, you had that double whammy of I need to perform every single meet and every practice. And then I got to go home and make sure I not just get my homework done, but do well on it and make sure I'm applying myself in the classroom, because otherwise I'm going to, after track's over, then I'm going to have to deal with that. So I think that's an interesting perspective. Like if you're a D1 athlete and a star, you might not have the same stress. But to me, these I guess smaller athletes, for lack of a better word, have even more stress on their plate because you have two things you have to worry about.
Right, exactly. You run it for the love of the game. You're not in as a D3 athlete more often than not. You're in there to get your degree and to find a job within the field of study. You're not there to be a big time athlete and go pro in that particular sport.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of Devin Georges out there.
Pat, did you ever have a time where you kind of felt, okay, maybe I could make it pro with this, or maybe go on to do some sort of Olympic type of running, or
Rio 2016?
I don't know, anything. Did you ever have that moment like, okay, maybe I can reach the next level with it?
I want to say I did, but realistically, I always, I was there to run for the love of the sport. I didn't ever really foresee myself going to Olympics or kind of reaching the next level. If I ever got there, then it would have been amazing. But hate to say, I didn't have that really aspiration of going Olympic or going professional in track and field.
Well, I bet that probably worked out better for you then, because you didn't have the pressure of, okay, this is what I want to do. This is my dream. So I have to do this. Like, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket for the athletics. And if it doesn't work out, then I don't have the academics to fall back on.
Right.
Like a lot of the players in D1 sports, they put everything that they have into it, and then sometimes they blow their knee out, or they're a bust in their first year. Like, look at Greg Odom. He was such a huge player coming in, and he blew his knee out 3 or 4 times. I don't know, however many times he got injured, and then
right away. He only played 82 games.
Look, I don't know the guy personally. I can't say if he's, an intelligent dude or not or whatever, but like I don't know if he completed his degree.
He's back. I think he did. He went back to school.
He went back. Then.
Yeah, he kind of had like and I know like Vince Young did that too. A lot of these guys though, and I think it's a little different because they were the face of the school, so they don't even need a backup plan. They'll let them back anyway, just kind of a honorary type deal. But no, I think that's tough because a lot of these guys end up in that position where they are. I mean, even in high school, you see this happen where guys they think they're gonna make it, and they're being told they're gonna make it.
Groomed from more than just high school.
Right.
It's like grade school. Like they're said, okay, you're gonna be a star, and this is the path that you get on to be that star.
And then they might not even get to college and be the star. I mean, they might even struggle at that level. I think it's a little rare, at least what you hear about. You hear a lot of them go to the NCAA and then they start struggling in the pros. But that's definitely a tough deal to handle. But the list goes on and on. You look at Kwame Brown and Robert Swift and just all these guys that they were just touted as these superstars, and then they get to the league and it's a different ball game. And also you see them not be able to handle the outside stresses too. It's not just they can't play. I mean, they're dealing with injuries, so that we see Greg Oden, we've seen Robert Swift, they've turned to addiction, and because they just can't handle oh no, I'm not at the top of my game and I'm not being treated as such. And now they don't know how to handle it because it all comes crashing down at once, and they have no backup plan because the only thing they really were trained to do was play the sport.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because 10 to 15% of student athletes have a, mental health issue it's severe enough to warrant like counseling. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about grooming these kids from such a young age, that's all that they know. That's all they focus on. When it doesn't work, then what do? They have no backup plan, like you said. And so then they really have nowhere to go from it. So
I think this is turning into a Robert Swift podcast too. I've mentioned him in 2 out of the 3 episodes. So
no Robert Swift in the next episode.
We might have him as a guest, so you never know.
So it's been interesting talking with you, Pat, as well about kind of the different experiences that you've had within mental health and kind of college athletics and everything as well. I think we've covered some good stuff here. Any other questions?
Of course,
for Pat?
I'm good. Hey, appreciate you coming on, Pat. Really fresh perspective and something we definitely, I guess as just regular students, you could call us. Back in the day, just seeing student athletes, you think, oh, they have all the answers. They have the life. You just see the glitz and glamour of it. And I think this goes for anyone. Exactly. And what we touched on last episode,
right?
And maybe not at the D3 level so much, but I mean, probably a little bit. I'm sure people looked at you a little differently because you had that title of athlete,
right?
And maybe they didn't even care what sport you played, but it was just athlete. So I think that's really great that you came on, and we appreciate you taking the time to let people know what people are going through and what we can change here in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I appreciate being on, and I'm glad I could shed some light on my experience, and hopefully it helps shed some light on other athletes and in the D2, D3 levels that are struggling with the same issues that we spoke about. And hopefully they can get some help if needed.
Where can the people follow you if they want to learn more, get more perspective from you?
I'm not a social media bug. I have Facebook, and that's about it right now. So I don't have a Twitter handle or anything like that. But,
well, that's okay because they can follow.
I'll have them go through you.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Everybody can check us out on pretty much every social handle we've got. We're on Twitter at Weekendology Pod. We're on YouTube. Just search Weekendology Podcast. We're on Spotify and Apple iTunes as well for Apple Podcasts. Aaron, where can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at Aaron Levi Berg. That's AARONLEVIBURG. Give me a follow.
I like how you had to spell that out too.
I always do, and I always will, because eventually I'm going to get someone finally trying to follow me. They're like, I can't find you. I spelled it ARRONBERG.
Yeah, well, they can find me at William Deichley. I'll link the spelling below.
I think everyone on this episode right now has had the struggle of spelling at least our last names wrong.
I can't believe anybody would struggle to spell your last name wrong. It's just BURG.
You'd be surprised.
No, okay.
It's a different German word. It's they try to spell it mountain, and it's castle.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks for being on, Pat. Appreciate it. This is the Weekendology Podcast with Will Deichley and Aaron Berg. We're going to be coming up with new episodes every Friday, so check us out, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again.